For the most part, I've been phenomenally lucky. I would say 99.999% of the head chefs I've had have been amazing, inspirational people. But as with all industries, and perhaps slightly more prevalently so in hospitality, people get away with being assholes a lot more. People can say really unpleasant things to people and it's just accepted.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Burnt Chef Journal, a hospitality-specific podcast dedicated to challenging mental health stigma and conversations designed to inspire a new, healthier, happier, and more sustainable hospitality profession. The Burnt Chef Journal is proudly sponsored by Planday, the workforce management system that helps your business give a shift. From scheduling rotas ahead to tracking time and attendance, managing your team's careers to managing your budgets, Planday has everything you need to make your day work in one easy-to-use platform. Try it yourself with a 30-day free trial only at planday.com. Get your shift together with Planday. So here we are. It is July. We're halfway through 2024, and this week's guest is just down the road from me, which is it feels a bit surreal that you're in Glastonbury and I'm here just literally 20 minutes away, and we're still having to do this digitally, but that's technology for you. So this week I am joined by the incredible Ayesha, who is a classically French trained chef specialising in modern Middle Eastern cuisine, showcasing the best of local and sustainable produce, which at the heart of Glastonbury was surrounded by some fantastic things. Ayesha is also a very passionate mental health campaigner, not just talking about mental health and well-being, but embodying that within her own organization as well, which is the Queen of Cups. So Ayesha, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. Could you make me blush a little bit there? Thank you so much. I'm genuinely really, really excited to come and talk to you. Yeah, like you said, we're 20 minutes apart, but hey ho, we're busy bees. So thank you for making the time this morning, this afternoon, to talk to me.
Yes, no problem. I mean, you keep popping up on the radar. Everyone's, have you met Ayesha yet? Have you spoken to her? She's incredible. And I'm like, oh, I feel a bit guilty because I'm literally only 20 minutes, half an hour down the road, but I seem to be permanently stuck to this desk. So Ayesha, for those who haven't heard of yourself, we'll start with you personally. What's your background? How did you end up getting into the culinary world?
Well, I took one of those slightly sort of circuitous routes. I was never one of those people who, at 15, I knew I was going to be a chef. That wasn't my background. I very much, when I was in my teenage years, I thought I was going to be a war correspondent for Al Jazeera. Quite glad I'm not now, to be honest. It feels a little bit safer for the most part in the kitchen. But I did a degree in Middle Eastern politics, languages and history, and I wasn't enjoying it. I didn't love it. I couldn't see a future in it. There are topics and elements of it I still enjoy looking at now, so I still have like a keen interest in like medieval Middle Eastern food and how it's still relevant to a lot of today's recipes. But being behind a desk doing translation or things like that wasn't for me. So at the end of my degree, I knew I'd always loved food. I mean, my second passion after cooking is eating. I adore it. And I remember my mum saying, what about cookery school? Would you consider it? And I'd never thought of it as a truly viable career because I'd always done such academic things. And I think there was also a bit of a stigma I placed upon myself there, that if I was academic, I couldn't do that. But I went to cookery school. I went to Leeds School of Food and Wine in London. And I remember my first lecture, and it was a 3-hour lecture on eggs. And that was it for me. I knew I was in the right place. I just fell in love. And I still remember bits from that first lesson. So it was Sue telling us, always sieve out your chalaza for your custard. That will always stay with me. And I just think back so fondly on it to this day. And it was the best decision I ever made. So I was, 24 when I started? And 10 years later, I now have a restaurant in Glastonbury. I've held a bib gourmand for 2 years. I'm out to the Observer last weekend. That's insane. That's absolutely mental. It's been a pretty epic roller coaster.
That is amazing. And you're also nominated for a Katie's that I saw. They were your finalist, yeah. Which is, that's no small task. So, Katie's has been going for years, and the accolades that are coming through. So going from eggs for 3 hours of seminar on eggs specifically, What would you say are some of the key reasons why you are, rightly so, being rewarded or at least being nominated for such great awards?
I think that, I mean, it's so hard to not feel arrogant when you say these things. And that is actually something I think we should touch on at some point, because I do think that, especially with female chefs, I find that they're a lot more modest and less boastful. But I'm slowly learning now, it's okay to toot my own horn when I've done something good. So I think that I'm going to try and espouse my good points without sounding like a bit of a proverbial.
Go for
but
it.
I do think it's different, and I don't follow what other people do or their trends. I firmly just go, that's a great idea, I'm going to do that. And 99% of the time, it comes out well. So I think there's an element of also work hard until the luck comes to you, because you can't just, it is a hard industry, and it's always going to be. It's competitive. There are so many other incredible chefs and restaurateurs. So much of it has been just keeping my head down, pushing forward, and refusing to take no as an answer.
Yeah, that's such an important, I mean, that's a clip right there. Refusing to take no as an answer, because yeah, it's so common, right? Right. If you took the first no you'd ever have, we'd still be in nappies being told not to do something by our parents, and you have to push through those.
I did once have a job that I don't normally talk about and mention them, and they will remain nameless, but I was told when I was fired that I should look at another line of work. And this was quite early on in my chefing career. And had I listened to that chef at that time, I wouldn't be where I am now. And yes, it hurt. And yes, I took a bit of a confidence hit. But thank God I got up and tried again, because I wouldn't be where I am now. So yeah, there is an element of just keeping going.
Would you say that since starting your career within hospitality, that people tend to enforce their perspectives on you during conversations?
For the most part, I've been phenomenally lucky. I would say 99.999% of the head chefs I've had have been amazing, inspirational people. But as with all industries, and perhaps slightly more prevalently so in hospitality, people get away with being assholes a lot more. People can say really unpleasant things to people, and it's just accepted. Things that were said to people in a kitchen were said to people in an office, they'd be fired. So I do think that there is an element of, we just need to tell these people to stop. Well, we need to stop allowing that, for one part. But I'm waffling on, and I've forgotten what the start of the question was.
You're not waffling at all. You're definitely on point, I think. So initially, we're sort of looking at that. I think that people have very strong perspectives, and rightly so. You know, if you didn't have a strong perspective, you'd be far too malleable. You wouldn't know which way you were going on each day. But I think that sometimes we assign a value to other people's perspectives, and we make that our reality when it is, in fact, the view of one individual or one person or one organization. But to talk about why the acceptance of being an absolute dick within this industry is, why do you think that, bearing in mind you've come from outside of this sector as well, similarly to myself, why do you think that there is an acceptance of being spoken to incorrectly is perfectly normal, and perhaps the sexual harassment or bullying has become so normal here?
I do think that there is this weird element in kitchens that, because I was part of this when I first joined kitchens, that you look up to the head chef as like almost a godlike figure. They are infallible, and you just want to please them. And I feel like there are so many young chefs, especially because when I came in, I was very unsure, very insecure. It was a tough learning curve for me. I'm not going to go and say I was a natural straight away. I was not. I had to work really hard, and I cried in the dry store a lot. But through perseverance, obviously I am where I am now. But there is that thing of, we look at these senior chefs and go, wow, I want to be like that. And everyone around you is doing it as well. So it creates this sort of almost cult-like thing. And I just think that I have bought into that. I have drunk that Kool-Aid myself. And now I'm trying to break that down a bit. My team know I'm fallible. My team know I'm not perfect. But they know I'll also support them unconditionally. So I don't want my team to follow me because they're scared of me or because they see me as this amazing being. Yes, I'm a head chef for a reason. They work for me because they can learn from me. But I am not some deity-like figure that if I tell you to scrub the floors, you're going to do it with terror in your heart. That's absolutely not how we should run kitchens.
Yes, that ruling through fear rather than demonstrating best behavior and role modeling those behaviors yourself, right? It's strange. Like I found this curious when I first came into this sector, having, worked in other industries, that there is this, especially if you're not well as well. Like I wasn't well when I came into hospitality, and you look at these people and go, God, I'm so broken. I'm really, really damaged because I can't sleep for 3 hours and then work 12, 18-hour shifts. Like there must be something wrong with me. And then to be able to do as you're saying now, which is, to show people that you're a human being, you're not a bloody robot, and that's okay. That's the way forward. I mean, in terms of your team, how has that been for them? Have many worked in those sort of environments before where there is that real humanity and that human touch?
I'm so lucky with my team. I love my team so much. They are wonderful humans, and some of them have come from those environments. I must say, I've been phenomenally lucky in that I have a very low turnover. 3 of my chefs who are with me now have been with me from within 6 months of opening. And I think that's testament to the way that we treat our team. I've got 3 KPs who have been with me since the start, since we opened. And I'm proud of that because it's a reflection on the culture we have and the way we look after people. One chef in particular, he came from a restaurant where, they locked the KP in the walk-in fridge and laughed. And I've just never liked that. As someone who is a bit more sensitive, that stuff really upset me when it happened. I was never a better chef for being yelled at or embarrassed publicly. So why would I ever do that to someone else? Why would I pass on that lineage of poor behavior and treating others poorly and expecting to get the best out of them? No, if you sit down with someone and say, there is a problem here, how can we work together to solve it? If someone is struggling with something, you make a plan together, you work through it together, then not only will they respect you, they will stay with you, they'll stay loyal, and ultimately they will improve. So you just have to stick with people and give them the time and the space to grow in a way that works for both of you. Because obviously, let's say I had a chef and he was burning everything every single day. Then we would go, okay, we're going to stop you doing those things that involve heat. And let's put you on things that just not going to risk that for a while. There are always ways you can work around it. And I'm lucky. I have had some of those head chefs who've gone, you're struggling with this element. Let's go focus on that instead. So I do think that is how we make it a better place for people to work and attract young people. If you get a little I heard a story of a 15-year-old working in a kitchen who was given a gram of Coke for his birthday. I was absolutely disgusted. Like, that is a child. That is a minor. And you think that he's going to come into the industry and end up being a great person? No, you're setting him up for failure. And yes, he may be a successful chef, but damaged as a human without a doubt. So as owners and head chefs, we have a responsibility because not only are we shaping these people's working careers because they spend so much time with us, but we are shaping them as people as well because they are spending so much time with us.
Yeah, my God. You just have to have a look through some of the comments on our social pages and people are like, oh, I've done 40 years. It's taken my entire life and my family from me. I'm not doing any more. Or I've done 20 years and it's had the same impact. And I think that there is a strong responsibility that actually we are looking after people from minors. We are looking after a variety of different types of personalities. And it's not just how they perform on a daily basis. It's actually teaching them the skills and the ethos to live life by. So if you are rewarding with drugs, I hope is that a recent story? I hope not.
I heard that quite recently, and it was that, and I was shocked when I heard it from the person who was also shocked when they'd seen it. But this is the problem: it still happens in our industry, and it's 2024. It truly baffles me that we expect people to want to join this industry. The hours are long. A lot of the time, the wages are not reflective of how hard people work, and then you go throw things like that into the mix. We need to make this an appealing industry for people because, post-Brexit, there are no chefs. I'm in the countryside. Trying to find people is hard. So we need to be doing what we can to make people want to come into this industry and to bring young blood in and to train them and make it feel like they can have a career, but also a life.
That's, I think, when you look at all the studies, all the research, all the well-being surveys that have been done, it is that work-life balance. And, you know, time and time again, you meet someone who's left the sector. They're like, oh, yeah, I used to be a chef. I did it for X period of time, but I had to leave. Otherwise, I wouldn't see my kids grow up. It's never that the money was really, really shit and that was why I left. It's always, I never had a life and my health suffered because of it. It's about being able to reattract some of those who have left with that right balance, and also attract the future generation, because the younger generation want to know when their breaks are. They want to know when their days off are, weeks in advance are. You know, they have to have this information, otherwise they're just not going to stay. So I'm interested to just go back to the beginning part of the conversation where you said, I'm an academic. I never thought that actually working in hospitality was for me. What was your perspective of hospitality and working as a chef or working in the sector before you got involved with it?
I think my perspective of the hospitality sector before I became a part of it was very much what you see on TV. And, you know, we're talking over 10 years ago now, the sort of Gordon Ramsay type figures. And I imagined it to be very brutish and very macho, which, you know, there were elements of that. There still is, don't get me wrong. But I definitely saw it as being a truly horrendous, arduous, very much only like the 3 Michelin starred life. Or the grill section chef who's been on the grill section for the last 30 years and smokes 40 cigarettes a day. I didn't see massive role models that I aspired to be like. But then there were more of them. I remember when I first started cooking, I sort of used to idolize Gizzy Erskine because I was like, this is a cool woman. That's awesome. So I do think that what had put me off for potentially when I was younger thinking about it was, let's say when I was 15, 16, I didn't really see those female role models in cooking. I didn't really see it as a viable career financially either, because I'd always, at the end of the day, money isn't everything, but it's nice to be comfortable, to be able to not worry. And I never saw chefing as something that could provide that. But I think it's wonderful to see how the industry is, okay, it's still got ways to go, but it is growing and it is changing. And I really hope that my team and what I do with them is creating that idea of making it more appealing, making it seem a viable option to people, and changing that opinion that people on the outside have. Because there is still that idea of the angry, sweary chef who throws things. And yes, those chefs do still exist, but there are a lot of them who don't now. So I do think that that is part of the massive change that we're seeing, for sure.
We've been speaking for almost 20 minutes, and I'm getting the sense that you are a huge advocate and campaigner for pro hospitality, and you're not afraid to use your voice. And I think that is ace, and we definitely need more individuals like yourself. Where do you see the industry going in the next 5 to 10 years? What would you like to see from it?
I think it's going to be a tough 5 years for the industry in terms of economics. I think that has been a massive factor that has affected the work pool, the number of people who are coming into it, number of people who want to come into it, and the way businesses are having to be so much more careful. Because I remember when I was a young chef, it was all these free perks you'd get with jobs. And I speak to my London friends now and they tell me those things don't exist in the same way. So I think I'm hoping things improve economically so people are able to support their teams more and provide them with, you know, an extra bonus, a pay rise, blah, blah, blah. But I also think that we now live in an age where if you are horrible to your team, you're going to get called out for it. So I truly hope that that trend will continue and be more pervasive so that we actually see happier and healthier kitchens where people don't, the idea of people still doing like 120-hour weeks, what the hell? Why are we still doing this? Are they better for it? I understand dedication to your craft. I truly do, and I respect that. But when I did that, it didn't make me a better chef by any means whatsoever. I learned skills, but I was miserable and nervous and anxious and made more mistakes. So I really hope we see a shift towards really making better work-life balances for people in restaurants, and making it a more attractive industry for everybody.
I saw another podcast recently with Tom Aikens talking about he was working in France, and they would wake up at 5, be in for 6, go through service until 11, finish at 1 o'clock in the morning, rinse and repeat 7 days a week. And it almost seems like, and it's less so now, but there's that glorified element of this is what you have to do to be the best. But I think from what I understand of what you're saying, and certainly what we're seeing, is that actually it doesn't make you the best. It makes you reliant upon stimulants. It damages your mood, your performance, your health, and it doesn't give you longevity at all. So I ideally hope, and we are seeing the changes, right? You're testament to that. Queen of Cups is embodying the change that you want to see in the sector, right?
Absolutely. So my chefs, they will do a 40-hour week. If someone is on hourly pay and they say, I've got some extra bills, can I do some extra hours? Sure, you can do a 45-hour week. But for the most part, 40-hour weeks are my standard. You know, there may be a week where 3 people are ill and we all have to do a few extra hours. I will also do them. It's not like I will expect my team to cover all the hours and not do them myself. No. If someone has to be covered and we have to work harder, we do it together. But that is the exception, not the norm. And I also just don't have time for this martyr bullshit that people do. I work 150 hours. So what? Are you happy? A lot of these chefs as well, they don't end up with their own restaurants and the stars and the accolades. They're in someone else's brigade, suffering for the idea that maybe one day that could be them. But for 99%, it isn't. And it's just using people and abusing their loyalty. And I have no time for that sort of, well, I've done this, I'm hardened. I've done it. I'm not hardened for it. I hated it. So, yeah, like you said, I will keep talking about it because it's only when I gave myself a work-life balance that I flourished my best as a chef. When I allowed myself a day off every week, then I'd be more creative. These are things that sleep is good for you. We know this. There are scientific studies. If you can try and find me a scientific study that says you will be better at your job if you do not sleep, fine, I'll take my hat off then. But for the time being, no, you can't tell me otherwise. Absolutely not.
If you're enjoying this week's episode, consider heading over to our website and supporting our ongoing work in destigmatizing mental illness and creating a healthier, happier, and more sustainable industry by purchasing some of our branded merchandise. We have a whole range of t-shirts, hoodies, chef's jackets, well-being journals, plus a whole host more available on worldwide dispatch. All funds raised from sales of these items go towards free-to-access e-learning content, as well as providing free support systems and help for those who may be experiencing difficulty with their mental health. And so for the budding entrepreneurs out there who have gone, well, how did you go from studying and being an academic to joining the industry at 24 and then to owning now your own business? What did that path look like from where you were learning about eggs in 3-hour seminars to going, do you know what? I'm going to do this myself in Glastonbury, of all places. What was that journey like?
There was a lot of hard work. There were a lot of very difficult times. There were jobs that weren't great. I went through the ringer, most definitely. I mean, I worked in London. I lived in London for 12 years. I chefed for about 7-8 years in London. And so, you know, it's a hard city a lot of the time, especially if you're a young chef. But I was very lucky to be in kitchens where I had amazing teachers. I learned a lot from some incredible people. And it was, I mean, I sort of accidentally ended up in Glastonbury, to be honest. It was never, you know, the goal was to be here. I was working in Bubbler in London at the time. Shout out to them. They are an incredible employer. They are wonderful humans. And it was during lockdown and I was making like 60 kilos of hummus a week for like meal kits. I'm grateful they were able to provide me a job during lockdown because I know a lot of chefs lost them. So I'm very grateful for that. But I also felt this level of, I wasn't satisfied. I'd been their senior sous chef. I'd done acting head chef for them. I knew I had the ability and I really wanted it because I'd always known, I'd always wanted it. And one of my friends lived in Glastonbury and had a bed and breakfast. And she said, you thought about moving here? You know, it's a lot more affordable, because in London or in big cities, you need backers, investors, or a very large wallet to do it yourself. Coming out here, it was a lot more affordable and viable. And so within the space of 3 months, I'd quit my job, remortgaged my flat, and invested it all into a pub in Glastonbury, which slightly insane, to be honest. It was a massive risk, but without risk, there's no reward, isn't nothing they say. But then I also, as much as like me, like every other chef, has self-doubts, of course, there is still that little voice in my head going, "Come on, you really want to do this? This is great." Perhaps that impulsive voice was what led me here. But then, I can't say it's not without lots and lots of hard work. I have missed like birthdays, weddings, things like that. I have done those things. So now that's why I don't want my people to do it, because I miss very important things in my friends' and family's lives. And it has got me to where I am now. But now we're seeing more and more chefs who are able to do it without having to sacrifice that. So it is firmly, you don't have to give up everything, but you do have to work hard. And I think it's finding that balance is so incredibly important, but entirely possible as well. And yeah, make your own luck. Work hard and it will come to you. Maybe I've been in Glastonbury too long and we'll start talking about manifesting soon at this rate.
Well, listen, don't write it off. I was just thinking back to when, if I had a conversation, or if I'd listened to a conversation now like our listeners are, and someone said, make your own luck, I'd be like, oh, yeah, whatever. What a cliche term. But, and this is really important, and you probably won't, not everyone's going to grasp this all at the same time, is that the world is a really weird place. Once you start opening up to the possibility of anything can happen today and any opportunity can be placed in front of you, it is eerie. It's scary how frequently it can happen. And whether that's manifestation, whether that's energy, whether that's spirituality, whether that's religion, whatever you trust in, sometimes when you start to think and look for it, it does genuinely tend to appear, and not instantaneously, and not always in the format that you want it to, but it's odd, right? It's such a weird phenomenon.
I mean, I'm in Glastonbury. I'm in the heart of manifestation where I am. I haven't bought any crystals yet, I must admit. I have been given a few by customers, though. But I do firmly believe the idea of make your own luck, the making of it involves hard work. I would never say expect it to fall into your lap. It doesn't. Nothing will ever fall into your lap, especially in an industry that you do need to work hard. I'm not saying slave, but you have to work hard. I think it would be foolish to say make your own luck, but expect it to fall into your lap in any way. It won't. But if you are dedicated and working hard and putting your love and passion into something, then good things do find their way to you. It's the world is an uncanny way of bringing good things to people who are good or doing good things.
And it also has an incredible way of biting you in the ass if you aren't on that path as well, right? If you're a shitty human being, you're going to get a shit luck, unfortunately.
Way too much luck, definitely. For the most part, no. Yeah, it's very frustrating when bad people get good things, but maybe it's a Glastonbury effect. Karma definitely, it comes around, definitely.
Well, I'm picturing a solstice at some stage, Ayesha. I think that we should be heading to the top of the tour and sound baths, manifestations, crystals, and just see what we can do to catapult this even further. From a mental health perspective, obviously, I don't know much about, and excuse my naivety, I don't know much about what you're campaigning for in terms of mental health. All I know is that people keep saying to me, you need to speak to this incredible human being because she's an absolute force to be reckoned with. So talk to me about mental health and maybe your experiences or the reason why you're so passionate about this particular subject.
So I have suffered with BPD for many, many years. Borderline personality disorder. I believe it's now being named emotional dysregulation order, or something in that vein, and is classified as a personality disorder. And it's something that becomes apparent in late teenage to early 20s. It affects more women than men, but there are men who suffer it as well. And it's characterized by incredibly intense emotions and mood swings, not in the sort of bipolar way, because bipolar is characterized by manic periods and then extended depressed periods. Borderline personality disorder reflects there's multiple times within a day. The mood swing can happen 5 times in half an hour, but they're incredibly intense. A lot of the time they seem completely unreasonable. The response, it's an unreasonable response to something. So an outsider would go, why are you so upset about this? But the pain inside is everything is turned up to 11. Everything feels intense. And even when you're not feeling anything, even the feeling of nothingness is so incredibly intense. And it can be very emotionally distressing. 1 in 10 people diagnosed with borderline personality disorder kill themselves, which is a horrifying statistic. It's not well looked after by the NHS, but that's due to underfunding. There are some brilliant NHS doctors and therapists, but they don't have the resources to help people a lot of the time with BPD, and it's often misdiagnosed. I struggled a lot with it in my early 20s. I was tumultuous, emotionally volatile, erratic. I would not say I was the greatest person to be around. Everything hurt all the time. And people couldn't understand why I was always so upset or so angry. But that also reflected in reckless behavior, over drinking, things like this. They're very common comorbid traits. But also you find there's depression, not leaving the house, not leaving bed for days. So it comes with a lot of comorbidity with things like anxiety, anger. So it can be really quite debilitating. And for years, I just thought I was very over the top. I was just very emotional and I just struggled. And I'd done bits of talking therapy here and there. And honestly, I didn't think I would make it to 30. I was so upset. I had tried to commit suicide on more than one occasion. I was self-harming regularly. I was drinking too much, partying too much, all of these things. And I look back on it and I sort of feel very sad for that person I was, because I wasn't just being a dickhead for the sake of it. I was in a lot of pain and I didn't know how to handle it. And I didn't know how to handle my emotions. And I was shamed for that a lot, because even 10 years ago, people didn't get it. And to this day, they don't. And I am phenomenally lucky that I found this amazing course of therapy that's specifically for it. It's called DBT, which is dialectical-based therapy. And I mean, it saved my life. I had the best. I love my therapist. If she's out there, shout out to her. It was astounding. But it was incredibly hard work. I was doing individual sessions and group sessions twice a week. I took medication for 13 years. I put the work in, and now I'm in a place where I no longer need the medication and I no longer see the therapist, because I have the tools and the ability to cope with something that for years crushed me and debilitated me. And there's so much stigma still around this. People don't want to talk about me mentally unwell or being depressed. It happens to a lot of people. And I think that by talking about it openly and me going, yeah, I really struggled. I was not always where I am now. And I still have those days that are bad, but I have the skills and tools now to go, how am I going to help myself make this a bad day instead of a bad month? I feel a moral imperative to talk about it. So I'm not going to say I'm a poster girl. I'm not going to say I'm perfect, but my God, have I put in the work and come a long way. And I don't want anyone else to feel ashamed and embarrassed the way I did for so long. So yeah, that's why I will talk about it all the time. And when people say, oh, medication, poo that, no, I love it. It worked for me. It doesn't work for everyone. But we should not be making people feel bad when they need help. We must support each other. The world is hard. The world is unkind. So let's be nice to each other. And then maybe those statistics of the 1 in 10 people who commit suicide will be reduced. Like we just need to be trying to help each other. Be nice. Just be nice at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree. And thank you for sharing that as well, because I think there's as you say, there's a lot of stigma. There's also a lot of lack of knowledge. And no matter, mental health first aid in the UK has just reached 1 million individuals trained, and they do obviously in Canada and in Australia as well. But that's still a very small proportion of the total number of people on this planet. And I think that there needs to be more open dialogue and conversation around things like borderline personality disorders or schizophrenia. There has to be more conversation from real lived examples, so that it takes the sting out of it and takes the fear out of it. Because I think that you're fearful naturally of what you can't see and touch, and I think that is one of the biggest barriers. So at what stage did you feel that you needed to access help? When did it become the point where you think, I need some medical supervision here?
I think I first went to see a doctor about it probably in my early 20s. I'm 19, 20, I was still in university. And they said, oh, you probably have a bit of anxiety and depression. Here's some medication. And it took a bit of the sting of it off, but I was still sad, I was still angry, I was still hurting. And over the next sort of, up to, I say, the age of 26, I was just a ball of tumultuous chaos. And, there was tears, and I couldn't handle life. And I'm phenomenally lucky to have great parents. And my poor mum would have to deal with me crying so often, or just being completely incapable, being reckless with money and going, I need help. I kept needing help. There was a point where she said to me, look at this, have you considered it? And I was so low and I felt so hopeless. So this was a stage where I just thought, I can't keep doing this. Everything, it hurts too much. Life is too hard. And I went for my first session because I tried other therapies and they hadn't worked for me. So I think that's another important element. The first therapy may not be the one that's for you. The first therapist may not be the one for you, but that doesn't mean give up on it immediately. So I met this fantastic therapist, and I remember meeting her, and I was sat in her office, like scrunched up, arms crossed, so unreceptive. And I hated the idea of group therapy. I was like, I'm not doing that, no way. And I was so self-absorbed and self-insular with what I was going through that I wasn't hugely receptive initially. But this therapist sort of, in the nicest way, gave me a bit of tough love. She was very gentle, very kind and affirming, but also did say, don't be an idiot, basically. We had such a relationship that I was able to have those conversations where it was someone going, you can do this, you just need to get on with it a bit. And I think there was a moment there where I realised I'd been so absorbed in the self-pity of it, because it is very easy to wallow. It's incredibly easy to wallow and to bathe in your pain and live in it, because that's what a lot of people are used to. And if that's something you're used to doing, it's actually uncomfortable to try and break out of those habits. So for me, that was my big moment of, well, if I don't do something now, I'm going to end up dead within a few years because I'm so unhappy. So it was sort of like my last Hail Mary to a certain extent. And I was so phenomenally lucky to have found a therapist that worked so well for me and a treatment that worked so well for me. And yes, it was hard. It was very hard, but I put in the work, and I'm so phenomenally grateful that nearly 10 years ago now, did stick with it, because here I am. I didn't think that it was light at the end of the tunnel, but there is.
Well done. And well done for putting in that work, because it's therapy is tough. Having to unpack everything and then put it back together again in a particular order isn't easy, but that shouldn't be anything that dissuades anyone from getting that help, because ultimately a life without doing that can be a lot harder. Yeah, to be able to have clear, coherent thoughts afterwards is such a refreshing thing, isn't it? And to be able to have the tools to be able to cope with those periods where you are struggling it's like learning to walk again, which eventually you start to run, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's being able to catch the unhelpful thoughts before they become unhelpful actions. It's, especially with borderline personality disorder, often you think that you assume people's intentions are what you think they are, and it's often negative. So it's, that person hates me because they haven't said hello to me yet this morning, and the cycle you go into. But now I have the tools where I go, no, they've just not said hello because they've not had their morning coffee yet. It's fine. But it takes years, and it is, like you said, it's learning to walk again. It's reprogramming the brain, because there's that, like, neuroelasticity. When you practice new skills enough, then you are actually rewiring the way your brain works. So you are actually recreating the bridges and the way that you react to behaviors. The brain's amazing. Yes, it can be a tricky little thing sometimes, but, you know, with the neuroplasticity, the way we can change it, it's awesome. So, I mean, yeah, sometimes they can be little pains, but other times they're pretty magic, to be honest.
Little pains is such a polite way of I wouldn't I wouldn't describe it as that, but yeah, no, you're right. It is phenomenal, and I think that, you know, potential is limitless within individuals, and irrespective of how you've been brought up, that isn't your lessons that you've learned or your upbringing or your culture isn't the be all and end all. You can always develop, you can always change, you can always grow. You might not necessarily know how to get there, but that's why reaching out, and that's why therapy and therapeutic services and counseling is such a valuable tool, because it does help you move through those hurdles or wade through that thick mud. So, Ayesha, I know you're very busy. I know you value work-life balance, but I'm sure that you've got a busy weekend.
My day off. I'm just going to be
weekend to prep for. Everyone's come out of Glastonbury now, so everyone's hungry. They want to eat. What's next? You're being nominated for awards. You've got the Bib Gourmand. What's next for yourself and for Queen of Cups over the next year or two?
Well, I mean, Queen of Cups will always be my baby. It's my first child, my first love. So I just want to see that place go from strength to strength. I want it, because when it gets more successful, I can buy fancier equipment, which makes the team happy and things like that. I just want to keep pushing and making it a better place, not just for me and the customers, but for the people who work in it. Because I'm so immensely proud of it, and what we've built is what I've built, but I couldn't have done it without their support. I'm quite ambitious. I want everything. I want to be on TV. I want a book. I want all of it. So I'm just going to keep pushing till I get what I want, because that's worked so far. So I'm not going to stop, basically.
I fucking love it. Absolutely love it. Do you know what? I've got no doubt. I can feel the energy, even through the screen. I can feel the energy coming off of you in waves. I think that you'll, coming soon to a screen and book store near you, I think is very beautiful. You can always do that guerrilla marketing where you write that book and then just drop it into bookstores as well. But I genuinely think that would. I think with the way
I've got a team around me who support me. I think that the potential is limitless. I think everyone's potential is limitless, so why shouldn't mine be? Because I do work my arse off, and why not? I just like to talk about food and talk to people about it and feed them. So any avenue where I can tell even more people about how great hummus is, I will take it.
Shout out to hummus lovers. I will pop in. And I will come and eat. I'll bring the family as well. And yeah, I think there's a fantastic, especially for your style of cuisine as well. That's my palate all over. So let's go and experience some fantastic flavors and really experience what Queen of Cups has to offer. A final question I'd like to finish up on before I finish the podcast is, and we've covered a lot of really nice bits here, bits that people can take away, is that if you were to meet a younger version of yourself, say, 18 to 20-year-old Ayesha, and you travel back in time, you knock on the door and you see yourself, what sort of advice would you give yourself now that you wish you'd known then?
If I could see 18-year-old Ayesha now, first thing I'd do is give her a big hug, because I think she just needs a hug, really. I would say it does get better. It may not get easier, but it gets better. I think that it'd be foolish to suddenly think that life suddenly becomes easy and wonderful and there's no problems. Life will always have problems. Life will always have hard bits, but you're going to be able to cope with them and stick with it. You will learn how to cope with the hard things. You will be able to bear the storms. You will be able to face them. You are capable. You are strong. So keep persevering, because you are more than capable.
What a lovely point to end on, Ayesha. Thank you ever so much. And if people have listened to this and they're like, I love this woman, I want to give her a book deal straight away, where can people find you? Where can they get hold of you?
I mean, honestly, if they just want to come to my restaurant to eat, that at the end of the day is my favourite thing. I'm a prolific feeder at heart. This is why I do what I do. I love feeding people. So when you do visit, make sure you don't have wear elastic trousers. I highly recommend that. So if you want to find me, I am in Glastonbury, 10 to 12 North Low Street, Glastonbury, BA6 9JJ. You can also find me at Chef Ayesha K on Instagram. And generally, yeah, I'll have, if I talk to my customers about my food all the time. A table will come up to me like, we loved it, and that's it for 10 minutes. I'm chatting to them about ingredients. But yeah, that's me. Come and talk to me about food and we can have a great chat.
Oh, I'm so excited. I am so excited. We'll get it booked in. I just want to thank you as well for being part of this, because no matter how much lived experience individuals have with mental illness, it is still hard continuing to push through that stigma and an open dialogue, and you have to show a lot of vulnerability in order to be able to share your experiences. So I wanted to thank you for that as well. And if anyone is listening to this and wants to gain access to support and you don't know where to start, head over to the Burnt Chef Project website. We've got e-learning modules there for free. We've recently launched our global therapy service, which is also accessible completely for free. So it gives you in the moment support and structured therapy services. Reach out to Ayesha if you're interested in the specific type of therapy that she's had as well. And know that you're not alone. You're not alone, no matter how hard it gets. And it sounds like such a cliche thing, but honestly, there are people out there. We're out here. We're here to look after you and support you. So, Ayesha, thank you ever so much for today's episode.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure.